And so without further ado, Heidi is going to start our introductions here.
Yeah, let's start. So we're going to start with Arizona's current Secretary of State, Ken Bennett, a Republican, former member of the Arizona State Senate and Arizona House of Representatives, a resident of Gilbert, where he lives with his wife, Jeannie Tenney Bennett.
Ken Bennett.
No? 1, 2, 3. Let's see. Can you hear me now? No? Okay. So let's start with Arizona's current Secretary of State, Ken Bennett. He's Republican, a former member of the Arizona State Senate and Arizona House of Representatives. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. Okay. He's a resident of Gilbert, where he lives with his wife, Jeannie Tenney Bennett.
And you may have noticed that we've seated the candidates here in alphabetical order. Next to him is Doug Ducey, the current Arizona State Treasurer and a Republican, former partner and CEO of the ice cream chain Cold Stone Creamery. He's married to his wife, Angela, and they have 3 sons, Jack, Joe, and Sam.
Also, Fred Duvall is Democrat and former president of the Arizona Board of Regents. He was first appointed to the board by Arizona Governor Janet Napolitano. He served as an advisor of Arizona Governor Bruce Babbitt, and he served in the White House in the Clinton administration as Deputy Chief of Protocol. He's married to Jennifer Heger Duvall and has 2 sons.
Next to Fred is Barry J. Hess. He's the Libertarian candidate for the governor of Arizona. He's run 3 times for this post and was a candidate for president in 2008 and the U.S. Senate in 2000. He serves as the director of the Hess Foundation Trust. He's been married to his wife, Gina, for more than 20 years. They have 1 son and they live in Phoenix.
And now we have Christine Jones. She's a Republican. She's the former executive vice president, general counsel, and corporate secretary at GoDaddy. Prior to GoDaddy, Christine worked for a Phoenix law firm focusing primarily on commercial litigation. Christine lives in Phoenix with her husband, Gary Jones, a retired Air Force officer.
Next is Frank Riggs, Republican and former member of Congress from California. He's a former police officer and deputy sheriff. And after leaving Congress, Riggs moved to Arizona and built the largest nonprofit organization in the country, dedicated to helping public charter schools finance and build their educational facilities. Riggs and his wife, Kathy, live in Scottsdale, and they have 3 grown children and 2 grandchildren.
And now we have Scott Smith. He's a former mayor of Mesa, a Republican. Smith was elected president of the United States Conference of Mayors in 2013, the first Arizona mayor to serve as a president of the organization. He and his wife, Kim, have been married for more than 30 years and have 3 children and 3 grandchildren.
And Andrew Thomas, former Maricopa County attorney. He's a Republican candidate as well. He ran unsuccessfully for Arizona Attorney General in 2010. In 1994, he served as Assistant Attorney General for Arizona before joining the staff of then Governor Fife Symington as both Deputy Counsel and Criminal Justice Policy Advisor. He's married to his wife, Ann, for more than 26 years, and they have 4 children. And I screwed up one thing, because they're going to kick us out of here if I don't introduce Dr. Scribner from the Phoenix Union High School District to welcome you. And we want to thank the Phoenix Union High School District for making this auditorium available. Please welcome Dr. Scribner.
Thank you. Thank you. Not at all, and I don't have a mic, so I'll use my principal voice, my substitute teacher voice as well. Good evening. My name is Ken Bennett Scribner, and I serve as the superintendent of Phoenix Union High School District. Bienvenidos y muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. On behalf of the Phoenix Union Governing Board, I did have to say that, welcome to Central High School for the Arizona Gubernatorial Candidates Forum. I'd like to take a moment to recognize our sponsors who have made this evening possible, the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Univision Arizona 33 and ABC15. Of all the school districts in the state of Arizona, thank you for selecting Phoenix Union, as we aspire to be unlike other urban districts across the country. Our focus is not to minimize student failure, but rather to maximize the success of our 27,000 students, a majority of whom happen to be low-income and language minorities. Our goal is to prepare every student for success in college, career, and life, and our goal is to convert this vision into reality whereby the rest of the state recognizes what we already know, that our economy needs future workers who are bilingual, bicultural, collaborative, and resilient. Thank you for coming to a school district which provides a window into the future. The demographics of our student population are a 10-year precursor to the demographics of the city of Phoenix, which in turn is a 10-year precursor to our state of Arizona. So at this time, I'm very, very pleased to turn it back over to Heidi Rempening from ABC15 Arizona and Steve Urban from ABC15. Thank you very much for being here.
And without further ado, Heidi has the first question for our candidates. We should say that we drew numbers, and it worked out nicely alphabetically. Secretary of State Ken Bennett will be the first to answer our first question.
Okay, so let's start with education. Arizona's public education system has faced hundreds of millions in funding cuts in the past several years. What would you do as governor to restore that funding and ensure that the state's education system prepares students for the demands of our increasingly global economy?
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you to the sponsors. We're all going to talk about what we're going to do going forward, but I'm going to answer as many times as possible, going back to my experience serving in the legislature. From 2003 to 2007, I was president of the state senate. And during that time, we had some tough budget years and we had some good budget years. But during that 4-year period of time, we put more new money and funding into the K-12 school system in our state than any other 4-year period in the history of the state. Over $640 million of new funding for K-12. Now, half of that at the time was to keep up with student growth and inflation adjustments that are required by state law. But the other half was additional funding. About a fourth of it was for teacher salary increases, and a fourth was for in-classroom spending at our lower grade levels. One of the things we have to do is we've got to get Arizona's economy growing much better and faster than it is right now, so that as that pie expands, we can take the dollars and new dollars and get that back into education. I think education and our economy are our two most important challenges facing Arizona, and they are very closely tied. We're not going to be able to make progress with economic development unless we have, as was mentioned, our young people, the talent, ready to make those companies successful. So one of the things that we will do is what I did before, which is get more money into our K-12 schools and make sure that the money is getting into the classroom where it matters for each student and less in administrative costs. And I don't know if the others are going to have as much difficulty as I can seeing the...
Oh, don't worry, I'll stop you.
Okay, well...
Mr. Ducey, you're next.
Thank you for having me here today. My name is Doug Ducey, and I do want to be your next governor. I think the best way to fund our education system is to kickstart our economy. I've spent my entire adult life in the private sector up till holding this office of state treasurer. So I think I understand what makes an economy work. My company was Cold Stone Creamery. We built that brand, which started here, up to 1,440 stores operating in all 50 states. We sold Cold Stone in 2007. Today it operates in 25 countries around the world. I've looked at other states that do things better than the state of Arizona, and what I want to do is reform our tax code so that we not only attract businesses here from other states like California, and we don't have to talk businesses into leaving California, they're leaving by the hundreds. We're already Chicago's favorite suburb, so we should be attracting those businesses as well. So I want to reform that tax code, I want to lighten our regulatory environment, and I want to lower litigation and liability so that we attract those businesses. And then I want to focus on what works in K-12 education. I want to change the debate from spending being the measure of success to what outcomes and results are. I want to value our teachers and principals that are getting this done and then reapply this in the schools where it's not working. I believe it's a teacher and a principal as a leader that make this happen, and that will be the focus to improve Arizona's education as we go forward, and we'll be able to properly fund and resource what's needed and necessary.
Mr. Devon.
Thank you very much. A joy to be here and see all of you, and to be in one of Dr. Scribner's schools. Some exciting things are happening in this district, and we recently toured West Ed together and saw the incredible work that's being done in some of our schools, and it's true in the charter space and it's true in the district space. But not all schools are succeeding, and we should be very clear on what's happened in Arizona over the last couple of years. We have cut our education spending, as Heidi said, put this in a different frame, deeper on a per-student basis than any state in the country. Our class sizes are the largest class sizes by average in the United States. We have withdrawn from early childhood education at a time when 40 states have increased their commitment to early childhood education. And there's nothing Republican or Democrat about this. It's led by Oklahoma, one of the most conservative states, because they understand that in a talent-driven world where educating our workforce is the single most important thing that we must do, that making that investment counts. So when asked the question, what would you do to reform education? Number one, no more cuts. Not another dime, not another nickel, not another penny. No more cuts. Number two is that as the economy grows, reinvesting in education around reform and around results is the most important thing we must do. We have cut taxes in Arizona dramatically over the last 2 decades. We can't continue to shrivel our investment in education and expect a good result. We must reinvest and hold people accountable, schools accountable, and students accountable for better results.
You're all doing great on time, by the way. Mr. Hess, you're next.
Well, it's interesting because I think I find myself in a minority here because I think that the school system here in Arizona, based upon the results, we have a few good schools, really good schools, but by and large, we're still ranked at the bottom of a nation that's ranked 39th in the world. Something is completely wrong, and it's gobbling up half of our budget. I believe we can cut the budget significantly to allow for other kinds of expansions of government that are incredibly needed so that we can get a better educated student who's not everybody being geared for college, because college isn't right for everyone. My focus will always be on the progress of the individual students and not on preserving the administrative process of education, which has so overloaded Arizona. I think that we should have a motto that we realize in our public instruction, where we are going to graduate competent young men and women who are capable of going out into the world and making their own way without ever burdening anyone else. I think that's what education is all about. So that when we talk about the different forms and the curriculum and all that stuff, those are the details. What I would like to see and what I plan to aggressively encourage is distance learning and voluntary competency tests. Because a diploma that you worked your butt off for an A is exactly like the guy who didn't for a D. There is no distinguishing factors. And besides, all a diploma does is tell you what you did, not what you can do. I'm more interested in the future of Arizona, and I think it's very, very important that we do go to competency tests so we can gauge what people are actually capable of, so that employers can add their supplemental education that will give them something that can't be taken back and something they can use for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Ms. Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and to ABC15 and the Hispanic Chamber. Thanks so much for doing this and being here. When my husband retired from the military, he went to work as a high school teacher, so we have a really good view into what's going on in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. There's a couple of things we should do about education funding. First of all, there are 227 school districts in Arizona, and we find very little economies of scale across those districts. And so as a business person, my first focus is to find the places where we're spending money that we don't need to spend and take that and get it into the classroom. To improve Arizona's average per dollar spend from the 54 cents that we're spending today to the 62 cents that is the national average, and the 62 cents that the really fine public school districts in Arizona are already spending on a per dollar basis. The second thing is, as it relates to preparing for the global economy and understanding that we're going to have to exist in this space, is to say we have some really fine models of education here, some of the best in the country, 3 of the top 10 high schools in the whole country right here in Arizona. We had to take those, fund them properly, and then repeat them into the failing schools. And it's tough, but for the schools that are failing, we have to say you either have 2 choices. You got to improve or you got to go away. And then I would say we have to state standardize and then apply the standards at a local level Standards aren't enough, though, because we know who's running our schools matters. So we have to be willing to say to the people who aren't cutting it, you got to go away too.
Mr. Riggs.
Yes. I'm standing out of respect for the fact that you are here, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon, buenas tardes. I'm Frank Riggs, and what I'd like you to know is that K-12 education is a true passion for me and will be a priority as governor. In fact, it's the second highest priority of state government after public safety, which is the first responsibility of state government. As a member of Congress, I chaired the House Education Subcommittee, authored the federal law on charter schools to create competition and choice in public education. And then, after leaving Congress to keep my term limits commitment, I started and built from the ground up the largest nonprofit organization, a community development financial institution, to help charter schools acquire, finance, and build their facilities. Most of those charter schools are inner city, ghetto or barrio, and serve predominantly low-income student populations and communities. And people would ask me, why are you doing that? Why are you so committed to that? And my answer was very simple. We can't lose another generation of urban school children as a country. But I want you to know I'm absolutely opposed to Common Core because it represents the further federalization of K-12 education, the nationalization of standards and tests. Those are decisions that Arizonans should make, consistent with our responsibility for state and local education. And I want to use the money that we'll save, the $350 million plus that it's estimated it would cost to implement Common Core, to serve the most difficult to serve education segments of the student population, and that includes students with limited English proficiency.
Please. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. And thank you so much for, for hosting this here today. You know, I come from an education household. My father was a superintendent of schools for almost 35 years here in Arizona, and I was lucky because I grew up in a household where the bar was raised, where high standards were expected. That's how my father ran school districts, and he created a culture of excellence, a culture that didn't argue about process as much as it focused on outcomes. What has been said tonight is true. For us to build a great economy, we have to build a great education system. We have to be honest with ourselves. Arizona's education system, that's traditional public, public charter, and other schools, has some pockets of sheer excellence, pockets of absolute despair, and a whole lot of average in between. We are underperforming, and we are not preparing our children on an overall basis for the future. I think every child in Arizona, regardless of their zip code or the neighborhood they live in, deserves an excellent education. It is our responsibility to provide them that opportunity. And the most important thing that happens is, first of all, we set as a statewide objective that we are going to do that, and that is the outcome we are going to strive for. That's something we need to decide. And I would support the most important thing, and that is what happens in that classroom. What happens between that teacher? We need to be obsessed almost with retaining excellent teachers, with giving them the resources they need to be able to define a curriculum and a way of teaching that allows every child to advance and allows that interaction between an excellent teacher and a child who has an excellent future.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, and good evening. The hard truth is that simply increasing government funding of our schools does not translate into better educational performance by students. We know that because for decades we have been increasing spending on our public schools, and in many areas that performance, as indicated by testing and other criteria, has either stagnated or worsened. That is the reality that we are facing. Let's be candid about the status of our schools. We need to ensure there is proper order and proper discipline. The idea of having school shootings, which it continues to be a random but serious problem, needs to be addressed. We need to lock these criminals up, and we need to do a better job of protecting the public, something that I know a good deal about. I strongly oppose Common Core. That is a federal takeover of our school systems. I support charter schools. That is an important supplement to our public schools. And I also believe in school choice. And let's not ignore that very important factor here. School choice is essential so that parents can have a proper role in raising their children. Those with religious faith can raise their children in that tradition. Finally, let's not neglect the status of higher education. Most college graduates these days graduate and they can't get a full-time job in their area of study. That's absolutely wrong. We need to do far better by our college graduates, and we need to invest properly in technical schools as well.